This is conferences in alphabetical order in College Football 26 Dynasty. So we're still in the early phases of our new CFB 26 scorebook that we unveiled in our last video. So we want to kind of get an idea of what a top level season would look like. And to do that, we want to do some kind of random conference realignments to really get an idea of what a great season looks like in our 3-year sim format. So we're going to do a video that I think someone suggested a couple videos back, which is the alphabetical conference realignment. If you did suggest that, let me know in the comments below. I forget who exactly suggested it, but we're going to do the alphabetical conference realignment, and it looks like this. The American is Air Force, Akron, Alabama, App State, Arizona, Arizona State, Arkansas, Arkansas State, Army, Auburn, BYU, Ball State, Baylor, Boise State, Boston College, Bowling Green, and Buffalo. The ACC is the C, D, and E conference. Coastal Carolina, Central Michigan, Cal, Charlotte, Cincinnati, Clemson, Colorado, Colorado State, Delaware, Duke, Eastern Michigan, and East Carolina. Big Ten is FGH, FIU, Florida Atlantic, Florida, Florida State, Fresno State, Georgia Southern, Georgia, Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Hawaii, and Houston. The Big 12 is IJKL, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Iowa State, James Madison, Jacksonville State, Kansas, Kansas State, Kansas State, Kent State, Kentucky, LSU, Liberty, Louisiana, Louisiana Tech, Louisville. In Conference USA, it's just the M's. Marshall, Maryland, Memphis, Miami, Ohio, Michigan, Michigan State, Middle Tennessee, Minnesota, Mississippi State, Missouri, and Missouri State. No independents. Our MAC is the N's. Northern Illinois, NC State, Navy, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico State, North Carolina, North Texas, Northwestern, and Notre Dame. The Mountain West is the OPR Conference. Ohio, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, Old Dominion, Ole Miss, Oregon, Oregon State, Penn State, Pitt, Purdue, Rice, Rutgers. Pac-12 S&T conference. This is one of the bigger ones. It gets kind of weird because the M and the N are so thick, and it's kind of hard to kind of move those around, which makes it so we have some unbalanced conferences at the ends of the alphabet, beginning and the end. SMU, Sam Houston, San Diego State, San Jose State, South Alabama, South Carolina, Southern Miss, Stanford, Syracuse, TCU, Temple, Tennessee, Texas, A&M, Texas State, Texas Tech, Toledo, Troy, Tulane, and Tulsa. The SEC is UAB, UCF, UCLA, UConn, UL Monroe, UMass, UNLV, USC, USF, UTEP, UTSA, Utah, and Utah State. Could be an argument that you would separate these by their name, like California, LA, Central Florida, instead of the U, but I decided I would go with the U. Vanderbilt, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Western Kentucky, Western Michigan, Wake Forest, Washington, Washington State, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming make up the Sun Belt. And that's our VW conference at the end of the alphabet. We're rolling with Bowling Green. It's the Alphabetical Conference Challenge. B, Bowling Green. B, Bucky. It's the only B team I haven't played with yet, so that's what we're rolling with. Quick reminder on what the scorebook looks like. We, I guess, again, unveiled it in our last video. The best team challenge looks like this. Championship gets you 15 points. Playoff win gets you 5 points. Playoff appearance gets you 5 points. Playoff bye gets you 7 points. Heisman gets you 3 points. Conference champ gets you 2 points. Our best team so far was Notre Dame in our last video with 54 points. We'll see if someone can beat that. This time, I am going to try to work on a graphic for this, but didn't have time to do it this weekend with the Super Bowl. We also have the conference challenge, 50 points for the championship, 5 points for playoff win, 5 points playoff appearance, 7 points playoff bye. The two new ones, 4 points for a national runner-up in the conference, and 2 points for a 4+ team playoff bonus if the conference has 4+ teams in the playoff in any given season. Last time, it was the Big Ten in our new regional conference video. They had 94 points, and the Notre Dame team that was the top scorer was a part of that. So can we get a team with above 54 points? Can we get a conference with above 94 points in our 3-year playoff sim to beat our all-time greats so far? We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so make sure that you like and subscribe. And then we're going to go ahead and sim to the first CFP poll. All right, our first CFP poll, and we got a lot of the usual suspects in the top 10 here. Not a great start for Bowling Green, 3-5 to start off our first season. But we have a lot of the usual suspects here in the top 10. But then we see Maryland right there at number 10 at 7-0. And that is interesting because they're in the All-M conference, which does include Miami. So they most likely haven't played Miami yet. They still have a game against Indiana in the non-conference, But other than that, they have Miami and Michigan in their conference who they have not played yet. Is this considered a rivalry game? It is. Maryland and Rutgers is for some reason considered a rivalry game, although I would assume that both schools don't consider it that. But Maryland has been doing quite a bit better in our new roster update. Really, for the last couple of videos, we've been seeing Maryland kind of push up there, seeing it even be a playoff team. So that is interesting. I want to work on the most impressive team. I think what I want to do is teams that start outside of 4 stars in Dynasty can be eligible for most impressive team in a video. Actually, we're going to go ahead and put that in. Teams outside of 4 stars to start a video can be a part of the most impressive team. So I'll make sure that we keep track of that as we go in this video as well. Georgia Tech has been up there 7-0. Again, pretty interesting because they're in the same conference as Georgia, but that is going to be all that. And for some reason, they avoid Georgia, even though they are a rivalry, whatever. They have Florida coming up in a couple weeks here. So we could see Georgia Tech push up in the playoff as well, which would be interesting. South Carolina up there is somewhat interesting. SMU, Arkansas has been better recently, which is interesting to see as well because they were terrible this last season. So pretty chalk besides Maryland and Georgia Tech. They're in the top 25. Let's see if there's anybody that's like not getting a lot of respect based on their conference. That's one of the funny things to see with these changes. So Alabama's 5-2 and not in the top 25. We beat Alabama? What the hell? Bowling Green beat Alabama. We came back from 11 down in the fourth quarter to beat Alabama. That right there. Let's go. Drew Pine, 333 yards passing. Bowling Green is here, baby. Forget what I said. Not a rough start. 3-5 with a win against Alabama. Holy shit, what a win. And they beat Arizona State. They beat Boise State. They beat Arizona. But they lost to the Bowling Green Falcons. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Alabama. Okay, so what I'm looking for is anybody crazy good and not getting respect because of their conference. It doesn't really look like that is the case as of yet. This is the best conference so far. The OPR conference that's basically the Big Ten from 2024. 3 teams in the top 5, minus Indiana, of course. This conference might suck. USC's 9-0. Everybody else has at least 3 losses. Rough. Washington's probably the closest example. And this was what I was thinking with this conference is it might be so like low end with the rest of the teams that Washington or Vanderbilt maybe would run the conference and just not get that much respect. 6-1 with a 21st ranking in the country is kind of rough. So anyway, let's go ahead and sim to the conference championship games and see what's going on. So we went 3-9 at Bowling Green, but did I mention that we beat Alabama? That's right, baby. All right, here are the conference championship games. Okay, this is an interesting one. Louisville in Indiana, 11-16. That is a big one there in the Big 12. That's the IJKL conference. Auburn is in our conference championship game. They're number 13. Duke, of course, is up there. They're 12-0 at number 7. So that's one of those ones where you see a little bit of disrespect based on their ranking. Florida and Georgia in a world's largest outdoor cocktail party, 4-8. They're in there. The Mountain West gets a lot of respect. I'm pretty sure that Ohio State's number 1 in the country, and they didn't even get into the conference championship game there. Not sure how Penn State got in over them with 2 losses, but that is what it is. Notre Dame is in a conference championship there. They were one of our best teams, or they're our best team overall. So we'll see if someone can dethrone Notre Dame here. USC should get in there at 12-0. So we have a couple undefeated teams, which is what you see with these kind of weirder ones. Let's see what we get in the top 25. So Ohio State's 10-2, but they are number 1 in the country, even though they lost to Oregon by 21 earlier in the season, and Oregon is undefeated, and they lost to Penn State. They are number 1 in the country for whatever reason. So that's something to keep in mind there. They'll be in. We didn't see them in there. Miami, we didn't see in a conference championship game. They'll be in. Okay, I guess because Michigan was number 1. Auburn is right on the edge there. Okay, so what is our... Cal's up there too. Okay, what is our... I'm all over the place here. What is our conference championship game looking like? Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3 for sure. Then it's probably 4 and 5. But USC could lose and give it to the winner here. Or USC, actually, more likely USC could lose. Yeah, USC could lose and give it to Louisville or Notre Dame. But they're probably both going to be in if they win anyway. Probably no one's going to jump in from outside based on what we have with the conference championship game. So let's go ahead and sim and see what the bracket looks like. Fernando Mendoza wins the Heisman. I think I've seen that like one time other than this. And he had a pretty good season, almost 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. The actual Heisman Trophy winner wins it. And it's not just John Mateer or Byron Brown. So that is a pretty good start there. What does the bracket look like? Okay, so nothing super crazy here. Auburn gets in the first season, which is a little bit weird. Other than that, nothing super crazy, nothing really that exciting, unfortunately. So Tennessee gets in. They will face off against Miami, with the winner facing off against Michigan in the quarterfinal. Maryland did drop off, so we'll have to look at what happened there. USC and Penn State will face off. The winner will get Oregon in the Orange Bowl. Auburn will host Texas in the first round, with the winner taking on Florida in the Rose Bowl. And then Duke, who was also undefeated just like Oregon, will face off against Georgia, and the winner will face off against Ohio State. So, first I want to look at what happened with Maryland, because they were top 10 team when we looked earlier in the season. Louisville ended up losing out of the playoff. Maryland ended up losing out of the top 25. Cal got close, which is cool, but not super exciting first year playoff with this. I'm going to have to figure out what team is from what conference here in a little bit. But conference champions, Oregon, Michigan, Florida, Duke, and Auburn all got in. So 7 is the latest conference champion that got in. We have 2 teams from the M conference. We have 3 teams from the OPR conference, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. That's probably the strongest conference this time. One team from the A conference. Nobody from the CDE conference, or Duke actually gets in from the D conference. EFG, Florida, Georgia get in from that conference, and then 2 from the T conference with Texas and Tennessee. I'll have to look at what the actual conference names are, but that is what we get in the first round. Let's see what the first round ends up looking like. Mostly close games in the first round. Miami gets past Tennessee 41-38. They'll take on Michigan in a conference matchup there in the second round. Penn State crushes USC 42-21. They'll take on Oregon in a conference matchup in the second round. Texas gets past Auburn, although Auburn was hosting. They win by 10. Florida, Texas in the Rose Bowl. And then Duke gets past Georgia, keeps their undefeated season alive. They win by 4 and will get past Georgia to go against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. One thing I forgot to mention, and I forgot to add it to the scorebook, but we are going to be adding in the undefeated season bonus. So you'll get +1 for an undefeated season in no matter how you do. Even if you get in, like Duke might go 17-0 here, Oregon might go 16-0. Either way, they would get +1 points for that undefeated season if you do end up getting that, which would have changed Ole Miss's score in our last one. They only did it one time. They had one amazing season, but it still will add to the score if you end up doing that after this one. So we have 2 conference matchups up top. OP, which I think is the Mountain West, and then M, so MN, so Mountain West, MAC. Maybe it's Conference USA. I think it's Conference USA that the M's are in, and then one more team from the O conference down below with Ohio State. And we don't have to worry about the perfect season bonus, as both perfect teams lose in the second round. Oregon loses by 3 to Penn State, who keeps their run alive, gets revenge on Oregon for the Mountain West Championship game with a 34-31 victory. They'll take on Miami, who scores 41 in their second straight game. This time, instead of winning by 3, they win by 28 over Michigan. It's Miami-Penn State in the first semifinal in the Peach Bowl. Texas gets past Florida, and Ohio State gets past Duke. Duke loses their perfect season at 14-1. Ohio State, Texas in the Fiesta Bowl, which is a rematch of last year's semifinal. They'll play in the semifinal this year after Texas wins by 7 over Florida. So Texas, Ohio State in the Fiesta, Miami, Penn State in the Peach Bowl. Only one bye team made it through, and that was Ohio State. And we had a chance at an all Mountain West national championship game, but Penn State ends up losing by 18 to Miami. Miami gets the home game against Ohio State, who won by 14 over Texas. So this is a rematch of the 2002 BCS national championship game. Shout out Maurice Clarett. This is Ohio State versus Miami in Miami for the national championship game. I'm going to tally up the scores real quick before we do this national championship game just to get an idea of where we're at in this first season. All right, so going into the national championship, it's pretty simple math for our top teams. There are a lot of teams that scored points in the first season because we got a lot of conference champions that didn't make it in. Indiana won a conference championship and a Heisman, and they didn't make it in. So they've got 7 points sitting on, or 5 points, sitting on the outside looking in. But for our 2 national championship game participants, it's pretty simple math. Miami has 20 points going in, 5 from their appearance and 5 from each win they got up leading up to the national championship. So 20 points. Ohio State is just 2 points ahead with 22 going into this national championship game. Of course, they get the 5 for their appearance, 5 for their 2 wins, so 15, and then 7 for their bye, which gives them that slight advantage going into the national championship game. But there's 15 points on the board. The winner of this puts themselves in a very good spot for the rest of the game, or rest of the sim, if they can get the win here, putting themselves either at 35 or 37 points, depending on the winner. Let's see who gets that first score, and then we'll go from there. For whatever reason, it wasn't showing it in the bracket, but you can see here that Miami ends up getting the win 41-31 over Ohio State. They get the first victory. They end the first season with 35 points in the lead as the best team in the video up until now. I need to do some points as far as best. Well, we'll do best conference at the very end. We won't worry about best conference until we get to the end there. But Miami gets the win, 41-31. They have 35 points in the first season. Let's see what happens in year number 2. So we started 3-5 again this season, but I wanted to see what happened with Alabama. Of course, we got that win last year, but this year they were pissed off. We lost 59-3. So maybe if Eddie George can't turn things around currently at 3-5, it might not end super well for them. We also need to look at Nebraska here because it looks like they're 10-0 and not ranked in the top 25. So we're going to look at conference standings real quick. Nothing super surprising in the top 10 here. We've got BYU, who wasn't in the playoff last year, but they're number 8 right there. Big matchup between BYU and Auburn coming up next week. Auburn, of course, was the playoff representative for the American last year, so we'll see. That has a long way to deciding what happens there. We've also got a big matchup between Maryland and Miami, our defending national champion at Maryland. Maryland's back in the top 10. They ended up losing out of the top 25 last year after starting in the top 10 with the first CFB poll. We'll see where they end up going here. We've also got a big matchup between Florida and Georgia coming up at, it's in Jacksonville, because that's a neutral site matchup. Nothing super interesting going on there, but I want to look at Nebraska because they looked 10-0, and they're not even ranked in the top 25. So Nebraska must be in the Pac-12? No. MAC? Yeah, so Notre Dame, who's 6-2 and lost by 28 to Nebraska, is ranked in the top 25, but Nebraska, who's 10-0, is not even in the top 25. They beat Notre Dame. They beat us, Bowling Green, by 2. I guess they don't really have any good wins besides that Notre Dame win, which they did crush Notre Dame in that game. They don't really have anything to get them. Oh, Iowa is 8-0, and they're not in the top 25. So that's one of the things when you start to realign these conferences in weird ways. Some conferences completely lose any kind of clout whatsoever. And so the MAC and Big 12? Yeah, they're 8-0. They got a couple big teams here that are just not getting any love. I mean, this is a pretty good conference. This is not a bad conference. You got Iowa State, Indiana, Louisville, even Kentucky has been good in some of the recent videos that we've done. Illinois, LSU, Iowa, Kansas State. These are all pretty high star teams to start off, and none of them are getting the love that they deserve there from this conference, even though they're all like 6-3, besides Indiana. And Indiana had the Heisman Trophy winner last year. So not sure exactly what's going on with that conference there. But let's go ahead and sim to the conference championships and see what's happening. All right, 5-7 for Bowling Green. So probably not going to get fired, but we need to get things going here in the final season if we can. We have a couple rematches in our conference championship games. Miami and Michigan are back together. Miami is 12-0 again this season. Looks like Maryland maybe did not get into the playoff yet again, but we'll double check. Tennessee and Texas both made it in last year. Don't remember if they played in their conference championship game against each other. Texas did win their conference championship, I believe. But I don't know if they played against each other. But either way, winner here is probably in. Loser is probably out. Maybe Tennessee stays in, but Texas is definitely out with a loss. Oregon and Pitt. Penn State was last year, so Oregon and Pitt this year, it's a new matchup. This conference that we talked about a little earlier got some love. LSU's number 20. Nebraska ended up getting a little bit of love. They're 12-0 and number 21 in the country, and they're going to beat Notre Dame for the second time and not make the playoff. We don't see anything from the Sun Belt this year. Washington's 12-0 and number 17 in the country. BYU's 12-0 and number 2 in the country. They should probably get in this year. USC will not be making it back this year, although they are 11-1. Maybe UCLA, depending on how things go above them. 11-1 from these two guys, 10-14. And Duke is 12-0 at number 5. Things are just too far spread out in this one. Let's look at what the top 25 looks like, or what the top 12 looks like. Is probably more so the fact. So we've got 3 teams at the top, all 12-0. Michigan 11-1. Duke 12-0, Tennessee 11-1. Then we have some 2 losses. Maryland is going to get into the playoff this year, barring something crazy happening. Ole Miss is going to get in as well. Okay, so pretty good setup here. Texas Tech might be in as well. So we've got some new teams making it in, and definitely Maryland being the most impressive team so far, along with probably Auburn. But I'd say Maryland is probably more impressive if they can make the playoff than Auburn, because we've seen Auburn win national championships. Maryland has very rarely made the playoff. So let's see what the bracket ends up looking like. Jaden Mayava with the Heisman, much less impressive season. They don't get in the playoff. Less than 30 touchdowns, 3,200 yards. So not a great season compared to what Mendoza did last year, but they get the Heisman Trophy this year. What does our bracket end up looking like here? Okay, so Maryland does end up getting in. They'll face off against Ole Miss, with the winner taking on Miami, one of our 4 13-0 teams in the first round bye. That is an incredible sight right there. That shows you that this conference realignment is not well balanced. Texas Tech and it's well balanced in some ways and not in other ways. Tennessee gets a first round game yet again. Last year they were the 12. This year they're the 5. They'll be hosting Texas Tech. Winner takes on Duke, who got a win last year in the first round. Couldn't make it past that. Maryland, like I mentioned, is in for the first time. Ole Miss is in for the first time. They will take on Miami in the second round. At least the winner will. Michigan is in again, and Florida is in again. They will face off in Michigan. The winner takes on Oregon, who will be hosting the Orange Bowl for the second straight season. And then Auburn and Georgia are both in for the second straight time. The winner will take on 12-0 BYU, 13-0 BYU, who will be at the Fiesta Bowl, and they're in for their first time. So 4 new teams in this year: BYU, Maryland, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech. Got 8 teams that were in last year, and a couple repeat conference champions this year as well. So we should see some new scoring. Miami, they could take a huge lead here with even just a couple wins, because they're back and they have 12, 14 points already just from their regular season, and they just need one win that could really push things up. Tennessee gets the win. A bunch of blowouts in the first round. Well, blowouts in the top. Tennessee gets the win by 3 touchdowns over Texas Tech. They'll take on Duke in the second round. They get a win after losing in the first round last year. Maryland cannot make it through, even though they got the home game. They lose by 18 to Ole Miss, so it's Miami and Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. Florida gets through. They were a bye team last year that ended up losing in their first game. They'll take on Oregon, who was a bye team last year and lost in their first game. We'll see if one of those 2 teams can improve their fortune and get to the semifinal this year. Georgia lost in the first round last year. I think Auburn also lost in the first round last year. This year, Georgia gets the win 46-44. They take on BYU. So we have 4 undefeated teams, 2 teams with 1 loss, and 2 teams with 2 losses going into the semifinal, or playing in the quarterfinal, but with the potential to go into the semifinal. We have Florida and Georgia from the same conference, Miami and nobody else. Tennessee from its own conference, Duke from its own conference, BYU from its own conference, Oregon and Ole Miss from the Mountain West in the same conference there in the quarterfinal. Ole Miss does stop Miami, which is big there. Miami does get 14 points in this season, 5 for the playoff appearance, 7 for the first round bye, and 2 for the conference championship game, but they don't get a win, so that limits their point total for the first 2 seasons. It's still going to be hard to catch them, but it is a big win there for Ole Miss. Duke and Oregon have a chance to have really good seasons here, both undefeated yet again. This time they both made it to the semifinal. Oregon gets the win 38-22 over Georgia or Florida. They will face Georgia, who got the win over our other undefeated team, BYU, 33-21. So it's Oregon, Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in a Dan Lanning Bowl. And Duke and Ole Miss will face off in the Rose Bowl. Duke got the win 38-23 over Tennessee. Ole Miss got the 3-point win over defending national champion Miami. So Duke and Oregon are both looking to get the perfect season bonus this year, get an additional point, and try to catch up with Miami after that first season. And Duke keeps the dream alive while Oregon misses out. Duke 15-0. They get the win 37-7 over Ole Miss. They're in the national championship game where they will take on Georgia, who got the win 38-14. 2 teams that were in the playoff last year. Duke got a win last year. Georgia lost. Actually, this is a rematch of the first game, the 7-10 matchup last season where Duke hosted and got the win by 2 over Georgia. Georgia reversed the fortune this year and have run all the way up to a rematch against Duke in the national championship game. And this is a massive, massive game here because Duke could have one of the best seasons that you could possibly have. The only thing that they'd be missing out on here is the Heisman Trophy. Other than that, they would have every single point that you could score in a season with our CFP scoreboard. So we're going to tally things up a little bit, give an idea of where the highest scorers are right now so far in our sim, and then we'll sim the national championship game. All right, so going into our national championship game here, this is what the scoreboard looks like. Currently, Miami has 54 points and is in the lead. Might I remind you that our top scorer in the last video, the first time we used this, our new regional conference videos, which you can check out, Notre Dame scored 54 points. So Miami has already scored or tied with our top all-time scorer with 54 points. Now, in second place right now, we have Duke, who has 36 points. Duke could score an additional 15 points here to get up to 51, but they would still be behind Miami going into the final here. One thing to keep in mind, though, is Duke does start with less than 4 stars, so they are in the running for most impressive team. It feels a little weird because Duke has been one of the best teams that we've watched, but seeing Duke win a national championship is still very impressive, which they have the chance to do. Georgia is at 27 points. They have a chance to get an additional 15 points here. They could get all the way up to 42 with the win here. Oregon is actually our third place team, though. They have 33 points. That's by virtue of getting 2 straight byes, winning 2 straight conference championships, and having 2 straight playoff appearances as well as a win here. So those byes really do add up. Even if you don't get a win in that bye, you still get more points for a bye than you do for just a for any playoff win. So those byes do really add up. That puts Oregon at 33, but of course they can't score any more points this year. So Duke or Georgia will be in second place going into the final season, and Miami could break the record. Really, any of those 3 teams, 4 teams, including Oregon, could break the record. Even Florida with 24 points, Ohio State with 22 points, they all have a chance to break the record at the end here. Duke actually could score an additional 16 points because they would get that perfect season bonus going 16-0 with the win here. But let's see what actually happens. And it's Duke with the national championship. For all the success that we've seen Duke have over the past couple months, really, with these newer updates, really in the last update that happened kind of at the beginning of January, Duke has not won a national championship that we've seen. 43-42 is the final score there. They had to hold off Georgia at the end, but they get the win 43-42. They win the national championship. They go into second place in the best team race. Second to Miami here. The additional 16 points that they score gets them up to 15, or gets them up to 52, I should say. So just 2 points behind Miami going into the final season. It's a neck and neck race, but there's so many points to score if you can make a good run at the end of the season. You could score like 45 points, I think, or 46 points. 48 points now with the perfect score bonus if you have the all-around perfect season. So it's not over yet. Anybody could still take it, but Duke and Miami are 2 points away from each other going into the final season. I'm going to go on a limb and say that it wasn't the best thing for Bowling Green to get that win over Alabama in the first season, because we lost yet again. Last year it was by like 53 points. This year it's by 36 points. Not great. I mean, this is a crazy run of games. Boise State, Auburn, Alabama. I mean, what does it take? I mean, you're right on the edge there to play Ohio State too earlier in the season. So Bowling Green is not in a great spot here. Did, however, get a win over Ball State, which is helpful. But I don't think that we're going to get that many wins with the rest of the season schedule the way that it looks. So RIP Bowling Green, RIP Eddie George, job security. What does the top 25 look like, though? So Auburn, Oregon are 1 and 2. Auburn kind of has a chance to do something here. Oregon definitely has a chance to make a big run here if they can do an undefeated season, win the national championship. Alabama, not so much. Tennessee, outside chance, I guess. Duke and Miami are the two that we're looking at. Duke right now is 8-1. They just had a rough loss at home against Clemson, which is not great. Do they have tough games the rest of the season? No. So they should be able to run the table here and get back into the ACC championship game where they've beaten Clemson the last couple seasons. That could really help them out. Miami, on the other hand, had a loss against Washington earlier on, reminiscent of 1990 and 2001, where they should not have been in the, or 2000, where they shouldn't have been in the BCS championship game, but they got the rules changed to be in the BCS championship game next season. I digress. They've got a couple big wins against Missouri and Michigan there. So nothing too tough. Maryland has fallen off since they made the playoff once, but Miami should be able to get their way back into the college football playoff this season, barring something crazy happening at the end. Florida has an outside chance. Georgia has an outside chance of doing something here. So we have a couple teams in the mix. Boise State could make the playoff this season. They probably have a game against Auburn or Alabama at the end. They don't. So it'll be interesting to see what that conference championship game looks like, because Auburn and Alabama are both at the top there, and they don't have to play each other either. So it's probably going to be Auburn and Alabama, unless something crazy happens. Nebraska went undefeated in the regular season last year, didn't make the college football playoff. Looks like they might be on a collision course to do that yet again here. Maybe if they get a big win over Notre Dame, that could help them, but still hasn't been super great for Nebraska. With that end conference, it should be strong. Again, I don't know why some of these things happen the way that they do when you make these weird things, like LSU's number 22 in the country. We already went through what that conference looks like, but they're 9-0. So we'll see what ends up happening here. Really, it's Duke, Miami, Oregon, Georgia, Florida have a chance to win it this year. Let's look what the conference championship games look like. Yeah, we went 3-9 again, so Eddie George ended up getting fired from Bowling Green. Not super surprising, but a little bit upsetting, to say the least. Okay, conference championship game. So Miami will be back into the college football playoff this season. Duke will have to win their way into the college football playoff this season with another conference championship, which could help them in the overall run there. We'll see if they can pull that off. Georgia and Florida both have a chance to get a big jump there. They're both on undefeated seasons currently. Oregon is 11-1. That's going to be a little tough without the perfect season bonus is only 1 point, but 11-1, a win there could be very helpful. Miami getting a win there could be very helpful as well. Auburn doesn't really have a chance here because Miami is at 54. Even a perfect season wouldn't necessarily give you 48 points. Auburn currently is on 12, and Miami is going to make the playoff again and probably get a bye. So it's going to be tough for anybody outside of probably Duke, Georgia, Oregon, or Florida to really have a chance there, with Ohio State seemingly not in the running. Let's look at what the top 25 isn't telling us. I didn't think that Ohio State was up there. Boise State is going to make it in for the first time, so there we go. That's a team that gets it's kind of hurt by Duke already being one of the most impressive teams, especially from where their standing is, getting the national championship. But Boise State getting a playoff appearance, especially in a conference with Alabama and Auburn, is going to be impressive. They're kind of in line for a bye, too, if something crazy happens at the top. And Alabama and Auburn are in the championship game against each other, so we'll see what ends up happening. But let's sim and see what the bracket looks like and what our Heisman looks like. Lagway wins the Heisman. I don't think I've seen that. We also win an entire video without John Mateer winning a Heisman, so that's great. This is a good season by Lagway. 4,400 yards, 42 touchdowns. Could be Florida on a run for a perfect season to potentially take best team in the video. It's well within their grasp if they can make a big run here, and that definitely helps. All the points count at the end of the video. What does our bracket look like? So Boise State does get a bye. We get 3 byes from that AB conference. Auburn is the only undefeated team going. Oh, no, Florida is undefeated. They, for some reason, don't get a bye. That could end up hurting them there. That could end up hurting them. That's 2 points they're leaving on the board. Maybe they make up with it. 3 points for the Heisman, so maybe that makes up for it. Duke did end up winning a conference championship again. Oregon probably ended up winning the conference championship. They were in against Ole Miss, so maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't win their conference championship game. That could hurt them in the race. Georgia made it in as well. So all of our teams are alive here, and Georgia's going to have a chance against Miami in that second round, assuming they get past Clemson. Duke and Miami very well could match up in the semifinal as well, depending on how that all shakes out. So we have a lot to play for here. Could have Oregon and Florida, Oregon and Auburn, or Florida and Auburn. There's going to be a lot of things on the line here for best team in the video. That's why I really like this new scoreboard thing that we're doing, because it gives us obvious stakes for each game as we get towards the end of the video. What a disappointing end for Duke. They end up getting crushed by Texas at home when they were well on their way to getting into a fight for the best team in the video. They lose 47-13. They do get a national championship in this video, but they will end up falling short in the final season of the video. What a bummer. Georgia, Oregon, Florida all stay alive in the best team race in the video. Georgia will face off against Miami after the 56-38 win over Clemson. So that is a big game there in the Fiesta Bowl. Oregon and Auburn will face off, a rematch of the 2010 BCS National Championship game. Don't fucking remind me. Oregon wins 33-31 over Tennessee. Boise State is a G5 team that got a bye. I mean, that's probably something that we're overlooking a little bit in the best team race, but Boise State is a G5 team that ended up with a bye. Maybe it's because of their conference schedule, maybe this and that or whatever, but they are a G5 team that ends up getting a bye. They will be hosting Florida in the Sugar Bowl after Florida got the win 35-21 in the quarterfinal. We'll go to the semifinal and we'll set the stakes for what those games mean based on the best team race. Miami might have wrapped it up there. With that win, 17-13 over Georgia, I think they might have wrapped it up. So, basically chalk aside from Florida getting the win 34-14 over Boise State. Great run for Boise State, but they can't hold it up. Florida wins by 20 there. They'll take on Auburn. That's the perfect team against the perfect team. 14-0 versus 15-0. Auburn got the win 34-30 over Oregon. And then Alabama got the win over Texas in the rematch of the 2011 BCS championship game. Miami, Alabama in the Cotton Bowl there. So let me put the points together and we'll see what these games mean if Florida still has a chance to catch them or if Auburn has a chance to catch Miami at the end here. All right, so our final season is here. We're in the semifinal and it's already decided, folks. Right now, going into the semifinal, this is what our scoreboard looks like. Florida, who is in our semifinal, as at 44 points with the potential of getting 15, 20, 25, 26 if they win out, getting that perfect season bonus so they could get up to as high as 70 points. But currently in first place, Miami has 73 points. That is shattering the record even now before we get past the semifinal in our third season of our previous champion, Notre Dame, who had 54. So they will win the video, and they could put a season up in the rafters or a sim up in the rafters that'll be very hard to catch in the near future because they also have another 25 points that they could still win, getting close to 100 points overall for this sim, which is going to be very, very hard to touch in any time soon. Duke is going to win the most impressive team as they started below 4 stars with this sim. They ended up with 64 points overall, including a national championship last season. So very, very impressive run from Duke, dominating not just their conference, but also the college football playoff. Aside from this last season, they were getting wins in the college football playoff. Georgia also had a great run in this video. They didn't get any buys. They didn't got one conference championship, didn't get any kind of real bonuses just based on their playoff appearances, playoff wins. They got 37 points. Oregon also had a great run in this video. They got 43 points, bolstered by 2 playoff buys and a lot of conference championships, which also help in the run there. But Auburn and Alabama, the two teams that we have remaining in the semifinal that haven't been named yet. Auburn has 31 points, again with the potential for 26 more. So they could get all the way up to 57 points and have the third best video, our third best team in the video, depending on how things shake out. And then Alabama has 17 points, basically all scored in this final season here, aside from their conference championship. Oh, no, they don't have a conference championship, so they basically got 17 points from this final season here by virtue of getting the bye and having a couple wins there. Let's see how it all shakes out. Can Miami put this all-time season or all-time sim together in the final two games of our final season? So Alabama puts the kibosh on that all-time season. I mean, it still is quite a bit more than what Notre Dame scored. 73 points is still a great run there, but now Florida, with that win over Auburn, really has a chance to put together a very great season of their own, and this could be one of the all-time videos as far as total points scored across the top three, with Florida looking for that perfect season bonus, looking to go 17-0 in this final season after beating Auburn by 7 in the semifinal. It's Alabama, Florida in the national championship in 2027 for the end of the video. How does it turn out? And Alabama plays spoiler yet again. They put together a great season at the end there. They scored 32 points in that final season, including getting that national championship. They stopped Miami from an all-time season or all-time sim. They stopped Florida from an all-time second place sim, and we get Alabama with the final national championship. But just to put a bow on it there, Miami, best team in the video. Duke, most impressive team in the video. We're not going to worry about best conference in the video because I don't want to go through all these different conferences. We're going to save those best conferences for the scores for when it's more of like the traditional conferences, if we just have one or two changes, not when we do these kind of crazy conference sims. But we do see a new all-time score with Miami in the Alphabetical Conference Sim, 73 points in this video, and Duke, our best, most impressive team so far, with 64 points and a national championship from below 4 stars. What a video. Thanks for watching, folks. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow.